Alright, thank you for coming to my presentation today on how to make a meatball sandwich. Now, it's the meatball sandwich greatness. So, it's a combination of meat, cheese, and also the sauce with a little bit of herbs, fanciness slash goodness, and of course, bread. Now, what we're going to do is we need the meat. Quite simply, it's going to be a half pound of ground sirloin, half pound of ground pork, completely necessary for melty, fatty, meaty goodness. And if you want, you can add a half pound of ground lamb to make it more substantial slash earthier. And now we're going to talk about the seasoning. You need at least 1 egg, breadcrumbs, onion, garlic, red pepper flakes if you like it spicy, a little bit of Worcestershire, parsley, salt and pepper, Parmesan grated cheese like you can find in the can in the grocery store. It's a good binder. Now, the proportions of the seasoning, it's going to be a cup of Italian breadcrumbs, a medium onion, fine chop. You don't want big chunks of onion in your meatball. A teaspoon or more red pepper flakes, half teaspoon. I like full teaspoon, like it spicy. 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire, pinch of salt and pepper. Keep it simple, keep it clean. Goodness. Now we're going to talk about the sauce. You need oil and garlic, herbs, pepper. You're going to need 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes, 14 ounces of chunky tomatoes blended into like a paste. You can have the oil infused with the garlic, makes it a little bit better before you start cooking it. And now we're going to talk about the bun. Bread, or my personal favorite, the meat cradle. It needs to be nicely toasted and buttered. It's a requirement. It's going to be brioche. Sandwich roll about 6 to 8 inches. And that'll come in importance when I get to that slide. Now we're going to talk about cheese. You can buy a 10-ounce bag of mozzarella shredded at a grocery store, or you can shred it yourself. Make sure you chill the block down. That cold cheese is easier to grate than warm cheese. And you can add a little bit of provolone in it, less than an ounce, just to make it a little more creamy, a little more melty goodness. You don't have to add the provolone. That's just my personal preference. Now, shred a little bit of basil, a little bit of arugula. It's fancy, but trust me, it tastes good. You don't want too much, but you're going to need to shred at least a good handful of each if you want to go crazy. So now we're going to start talking about mixing the meat. You're going to need a large bowl, either metal, wood, doesn't matter, just big enough to hold all the meat and seasonings. You know, the breadcrumbs, the egg, all that stuff from slide 3. It's important. You want to get it all up in there, hands dirty, completely combined, and you can smooth it out, bash it in. Just make sure you get it all mixed. Now, after you get the meat mixed, you're going to start the sauce. You need a saucepan over medium heat. You're going to add in that oil and garlic. If it's already infused, great. After a minute, you're going to add in the herbs and crushed pepper. Allow that oil to infuse with all those herbs, spices, and also the garlic. Then, a few minutes after that, you're going to add in the tomatoes and the sauce. But first, it's cooking time. So you're going to preheat the oven to 450. Roll the meat into an equal-sized ball. Stop thin, palm your hand. Space it evenly on a cooking sheet. Roast for about 12-15 minutes, depending on your oven and elevation. You want to make sure they're perfectly cooked. But while they're cooking, you're going to finish the sauce. You're going to bring that to a boil. After combining all that sauce, the tomatoes, the herb, garlic, all that stuff, you're going to want to combine them. And once you bring it to a boil, that means it's cooked. And now you're going to allow the sauce to cool before you add in the meatballs, because you don't want the sauce to be too hot, because then you'll start cooking your meatballs. Now, it's time to prepare for sandwich assembly. This is an important step, so don't skip around. So you want the sandwich rolls laid out on plates. Want the meatballs out of the oven, resting on the cooking sheet. You want your pan on the stove, cooling the sauce. You want your bag of cheese piled ready. And now you're going to check the meatballs for proper cooking. You can have undercooked meatballs. That's bad. Kids, all that stuff. Make sure the middles are not pink and that the internal temperature is at least 160 degrees. That is cooked for the mixed meat, which is the sirloin, pork, and optional lamb. Now, you're going to stir the sauce, because if you let tomato sauce sit, it gets like a little film on it. And you also want to make sure that all the oil and stuff is mixed back into the sauce. Make sure everything's all nice and smooth. You don't want chunky sauce. It will.
It's 1 o'clock.
It'll hurt the blend of the sandwich. Now, you're gonna add 4 meatballs to the sandwich. It should fit from one end of the bun to the other end of the bun. 6 to 8 inches. That's why I said it's very important that it has to be 6 to 8 inches. Should fit 4 mini meatballs perfectly nice in a little row, like little ducklings. And you can soak them in the sauce pre-hand before you put them on the bun, but make sure you do coat the meatballs with the sauce. You're going to pour gently over the top. You don't want to flood the sandwich. Don't want to get on the bun because that'll make the bun all soggy and your sandwich will fall apart. That's bad. So just pour enough to cover the meatballs and so you can still see the bread. Now it's time to add the cheese. You're going to sprinkle over the top. Make sure you coat the entire sandwich. Sauce, meatballs, you don't want to see any of that. You want to be covered by the cheese. And if you want, you can toast the cheese in the oven, make it all nice and crispy on top. Add just a little added thing, make sure add a little more creaminess to it. Now, you're gonna sprinkle on the herbs. Sprinkle like fresh from morning snowfall, just a little bit. Not too much, because then you're gonna overwhelm the cheese and sauce and meat. Because basil and oregano are very strong herbs, but if you sprinkle them just over the top, you'll make a nice little bit of sandwich. And now it's time to enjoy your sandwich and eat it. So, I hope you enjoy your sandwich and thank you for coming to my presentation.